everybody. I hope you guys had a good weekend. We are going to be picking back up where we left off on the anxiety disorders chapter. So, we talked about generalized anxiety disorder last week, and today we're going to be talking about something that I'm sure you're all familiar with: phobias. So, phobic disorder is a disorder where you have phobias. And a phobia, if you've never heard of it, is a form of a severe anxiety in which a person focuses on a particular object or situation. So, people are really, really afraid of particular things or ideas. So there's this little spider here. A lot of people have fear of spiders. And that fear of spiders, if you have like a phobic disorder, would be called arachnophobia. Arachna meaning arachnid, like a spider, and phobia is the fear or the anxiety. So you could be afraid of just an idea, like an idea of death. You could be afraid of an action, like going outside. You could be afraid of vomiting. You could be afraid of or have a phobia of heights. You could have a phobia of closed spaces, which is claustrophobia. There are literally phobias about everything. The craziest phobias I've ever heard of, one is, I forget what it's called. I don't know what these are called because they're really long names. There is a list of them though, which you guys are going to look at. One phobia is getting peanut butter stuck to the roof of your mouth. And another one is the phobia of the knowledge that somewhere a duck is looking at you. Very strange, but yeah, people have them. So these phobia disorders or phobic disorders are characterized into three groups. You have your simple or specific phobia, where you're afraid of something, something very specific. A social phobia, where you're afraid of social situations. And agoraphobia. So simple or specific phobias are what we think of when we think of a phobia. Being afraid of snakes, being afraid of dogs, being afraid of heights. And they could focus on almost anything, including high places like acrophobia, like acrobat, enclosed spaces, claustrophobia, and darkness, nyctophobia. So I am afraid of high places. I'm afraid of heights. I am not a fan. I don't like being on the edge of anything. I don't mind enclosed spaces. I used to hate the dark, but I don't anymore. So I'm going to have you guys list a couple of your fears and you are going to match them up with the phobia name. I'm going to give you guys a list and you're going to try to find your phobias on the list. Um, these specific phobias are super intense and they are the persistent fear of specific objects or situations that objectively pose little or no actual threat. So being afraid of maybe something like failing a test, that's a normal anxiety for students to have. Being maybe like a little afraid of a spider, it's kind of a normal thing to have. But if you are so afraid of a spider where you run away from it, you scream, everything like that, the spider does not pose a threat unless it's like a black widow or something. But these things don't really pose much of a threat to us. Being on a high place, unless you're dangling, by your hand off of a cliff, there's really no reason to be afraid of being up high, like up in on a bridge or something like that. There's really no threat. So these are irrational fears. It's not going. My computer is. Hold on. Oh, there we go. Okay. So you're not going to be getting a handout, obviously, but you guys are going to be reviewing these specific phobias on the worksheet, the link that I give you guys, and you are going to indicate the phobia that would represent your number one biggest fear. So animal phobias are really, really common. Um, that could include spiders, dogs, cats, snakes, anything like that. And they usually develop in early childhood. So you usually have like a bad experience with an animal, or maybe you watch a movie. Like when I was in third grade, I watched the Alfred Hitchcock movie The Birds, and I was terrified of birds for like a year. It really was debilitating. And I would be at the beach and the seagulls, I would cry. It was a scene. But you usually develop these animal phobias young. You're not going to develop a fear of snakes in your 40s. Um, Blood injections and injuries are also a super common phobia, and the majority of these phobias develop by early teens and are seen in females more than in males. So a lot of people don't like the sight of blood, don't like getting needles, tattoos, having their blood drawn. People are afraid of getting injured, which might make you not want to leave the house. That a lot of these phobias can go hand in hand with other phobias. We call that comorbidity. So, a social phobia is not the same thing as not wanting to leave the house. It's really not wanting to be in a social setting because they're afraid that they're going to embarrass themselves or do something where people are going to laugh at them. They're afraid of being in social situations. They're not afraid of being outside of the house because they could be alone outside of the house. So, the most common social phobia is speaking in public, public speaking, giving oral presentations, anything like that. A lot of people are really afraid of being in front of a crowd, speaking, acting, singing. So that's super common. But others that are not as common are eating in public, which, that's one, I guess. I don't have that phobia. Using public bathrooms, meeting people that you don't know, or going on first dates. It all involves embarrassing yourself, embarrassment, messing up on, a handshake or something like that. So agoraphobia is not really wanting to leave your home, or it could get to that point. So people with agoraphobia, they have extreme fear of crowds and other people. So they really don't want to be around other people, not because they're embarrassed, but because they're afraid of them. They may stop going to movie theaters or shopping in large busy stores for for fear of just crowded areas. They don't want to be around people. And some of these people just get to the point where they don't leave their houses. The anxiety is so intense that they just don't go out unless they absolutely have to. So here's just a little infographic bar graph, that talks about the most prevalent phobia or the most common phobia. So how do people deal with phobias? There are many treatments for phobic disorder. But people deal with them sometimes not in the best ways. So, avoiding the object or situation that frightens them is the most common dealing with of phobias that people do without like treatment. So, if you're afraid of heights, you won't go up high. If you're afraid of closed spaces, you won't go into like elevators and stuff like that. And if you're afraid of being around crowds, you won't leave the house. So it really infringes on your life and it interferes with your work, with your relationships, and stuff like that. The phobias are learned and maintained by the reinforcing effects of avoidance. So let's say you are afraid of the dark, okay? You're afraid of the dark, so you keep the lights on all the time. That's not really healthy because you should be turning the lights off sometimes. Your body needs to be able to rest in the dark, and it's not very healthy for your electric bill either. um, but your anxiety is lessened by the fact that you're in the light. So it's kind of like a never ending cycle. Like you have this anxiety of the dark, your fear of the dark, so you turn on the light and that anxiety goes away. So your phobia is kind of reinforced by you avoiding the phobia to begin with. There is treatment though, and one common form of treatment for phobias involves providing the phobic person with opportunities to experience the feared object under conditions in which he or she feels safe. This is called systematic desensitization, and it is basically a hierarchy, or if you guys remember Maslow's hierarchy, you go from little um, things here and there, and you kind of gradually increase the risk. So the procedure begins by teaching the phobic client to become proficient at muscle relaxation, which leads to calmness. So basically, you learn how to become calm and you create this anxiety hierarchy. So while you're in a very deeply relaxed state, the client is asked to imagine the least frightening item on this anxiety hierarchy. So, for example, let's say you're afraid of spiders. Okay, so they will say, okay, think of a spider and try to remain calm. Once you're able to do that, it will increase to looking at a picture of a spider. Once you're able to remain calm doing that, you might be able to go up to watching a video of a spider. If you panic too much, you go back to thinking about it and you work your way up again. You'll work your way up watching a video of a spider, being outside where a spider is on the sidewalk, um, being in a room with a spider loose, perhaps having a spider on the table where you're sitting, holding a spider, putting a spider on your face. That would be the most intense part of the hierarchy. So that is it for today. So what you guys are going to be doing is, number one, you are going to be doing an ed puzzle on phobias. And number two, you are going to be finding your phobia on a list of phobias. Okay, so that is it. Expect a quiz. Oh, actually, no. No, you don't have a quiz. Never mind. Next class, we're going to be talking about panic disorder. So if you have any questions, please let me know. If you would like to do virtual office hours later in the week, let me know and I'll set that up with you. All right, have a good one.